everything. The way I walk, the way I breathe. Will my fate shift into the night? But here I am, same old thing. Thinking deep, no ecstasy. Reality haunts the living mind. If I saw another day, only to scream into the night. Nothing ever tries to change, even if I want to realize. 'Cause I've been sitting here, same old ways, thinking of about the same mistake. Darling, where you going? It won't be as simple for you.
And we're back. We're back, guys. Yo, guys. It is Old Man G here, back again with Tom the journalist. We're here to bring you some takeover news, because that's what you guys love. So, first off, welcome if you're new to the channel, to like, share, and subscribe to Red Devil Studio. Follow us on Twitter, We Unite X, and smash the notification button for latest Manchester United news and clearly takeover news as well. We've got a bit of an update today. Obviously, thank you for coming on the show, Tom. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm not. I'm doing well anyway. G. Thanks for having me back on as always. And yeah, anybody who's watching either live or post stream or whatever video, make sure to like, subscribe, share. G's content as well, people. So yeah, thanks for having me as always, G.
Appreciate it, buddy. Appreciate it. Remember, guys, like the vid, subscribe if you're new. Follow us on Twitch. The link is in the chat as well. Get your comments in if you have questions for myself or Tom. Obviously, I'll be looking at the chat. Consider becoming a member as well. Click the member button, as well as look at the merch as well. So trying to give you this good content. So let's get into it. Okay, let's go into it. So because the title of this is obviously Game Over for Jim, and based on what obviously Thomas we discussed all today, I'll explain why. So first and foremost, Tom, can you kind of explain to the audience like why right now it's looking very, very dire for Sir Jim right now, and why it's looking unlikely that like his bid is actually going to be successful?
Well, it's looking increasingly unlikely that Sir Jim Ratcliffe's bid is. Not that it can't be, accepted, because look, it gives the option for them to stay, and if they want to stay, then they have the option to. That's the only real thing that Sir Jim Ratcliffe and the Ineos bid holds any weight to, really. In terms of the sort of money that's involved in the deal and how it's structured in terms of settlements and payments, and then you've got put on call options. It's not. If I'm being completely honest, it's not very attractive. Even if it was to get you more money in the long term, it's very complicated to do. And the one update that we had from US sources, which would have been around midday today, would have been that when we contacted them directly, was it comes after the Glazer family have said to have been in agreement that they should sell Manchester United for near to or their exact valuation of £6 billion. And as we've previously reported, the Glazer family have each member of them have always wanted at least $1 billion each, regardless. And now we can say for sure that this is regardless of the share percentages that they each own as individuals. So, for example, you could have the Glazer family, all 6 members own 69%. Joel could have 10. Darcy could have 30, whatever. That's where I'm getting at in terms of the percentages. In terms of individual parts of the family, But I wouldn't insist upon it's a major development because all this is just an agreement within the family. But that's just your family that you're communicating with. This hasn't been, just to stress, this hasn't been their option that they have put forward to Reign in terms of that's what they want to go for, and neither has the interested parties in buying Manchester United been told this. This is just a family who have discussed between themselves, and they've come to the conclusion that if they can get $1 billion each, then they should sell the football club, and they're all in agreement upon that. For which, before there was question marks around, Joel and Avram, do they want to stay? Even if the right money came in, would they even sell if the right money came in? That sort of theory can really be put to bed, really. And throughout the process, myself and colleagues have always maintained the same stance that has been communicated throughout the whole way of the process, even when it started back in November last year. And that was, should the right price come on the table, all 6 members of the Glazer family are prepared to sell their shares of the football club. And for which this has been a sustained message that has always come through from any side that you speak to, whether you speak to people close to the Qatari delegation, to the INEOS delegation. Everybody in this process who has a part to play, whether you're the seller in the Glazer family's mind, whether you're Reign in terms of the actual advertisers and the promoters of the sale, whether you're one of the interested parties, there is a belief upon everybody that the Glazer family will sell Manchester United for the right price. And all of the parties believe that, but they don't fully trust that because the Glazer family have never shown their hand truly as to what they want to do because they've never picked a path. They've never picked a road that they want to go down. And the reason why they've never done that is because they have 2 options for which they can go on different paths. You can choose Sheikh Jassim, go for a full sale. You can choose Sir Jim, stay in for a couple more years and get bought out. Like, there's different roads that you can go down. Or there's even just a minority investment group, which, can't obviously be ignored, but it is still there. So, all in all, the Glazer family as a whole have come to an agreement between themselves that should they get in excess of $1 billion each, regardless of their share percentages, they're willing to sell Manchester United to whoever meets that sort of evaluation. And really, in the process, when Sir Jim Ratcliffe has proposed to keep some of them in, and that's been his main sticking point around, that's his bid really, around he has to keep some of them in because of the financing that he wasn't able to get in place to buy Manchester United for the whole £6 billion asking price, because he could only get $5 billion. And $5 billion, I think, don't quote me on it, I think it's roughly around £4 billion. It might be a little bit less. So, hence he's had to strike a deal in this case to try and acquire the football club at least. But surrounding that, if the Glazer family, all 6 of them, as I say, are all in agreement upon will sell for the right price, that swings more momentum towards Sheikh Jassim because he's the only one who has a credible 100% offer, unless at the 11th hour, mysteriously, Sir Jim Ratcliffe can find more money from somewhere. I don't know, he brings it out of his own, account, or he finds financing from maybe a minority investment group. But these, avenues and paths will have obviously been discussed, but the one thing I know from the INEOS side is they didn't want to partner with anybody. They wanted to get in just themselves. So in terms of a partnership with somebody, I don't really think it would work. So the pendulum swings more towards Qatar based upon the fact of all 6 members in agreement that they'll sell if the right price comes in. So really, if Sheikh Jassim's 5th bid comes close to their evaluation, or it gives them, after conversions, $1 billion each for each member, then the Glazer family.
Tom, there's a quick
sell.
question. Richard has a quick question that just says, how does math work? If 6 Glazers want $1 billion each equals $6 billion, so 69%, club valuation equals $8.7 billion, does not add up. So how does because presumably then it means that Sheikh Jassim would have to pay up to that, so 8.7 billion then, considering also.
Well, I think obviously don't quote me on it because I'd have to go and do the conversions and everything. I think £6 billion roughly works out at around about $4 billion. So in essence, if you go on that and you go for that basis, each member would get $1 billion each, but they'd also have another $1.4 billion just sitting there to distribute between themselves as all six members. So that's why I guess the posture of around when the Qataris have put in maybe lowball offers where they've gone in with £5 billion or something like that. Like the way the process has been run, it's been you bid in dollars, you don't bid in pounds. The reason why the British media have obviously put it into pounds and context is it's easier for Brits and your average newspapers and viewers to read, because you're in your own country and it's your own currency. You're going to understand pounds better than you are dollars. So the way that the process has been run is in dollars. But I understand the point that I can't remember who it was that made the question. I understand your question in terms of the maths and how it doesn't work out. But the Glazer family wanted £6 billion, which if you equate it, it goes to set around about $7.4 billion. So if, for example, Sheikh Jassim's bid, I don't know, £5.5 billion, if you convert it, I think that's roughly around in and around about 6.8, maybe even $7 billion. So something around that sort of ballpark figure equates to what the Glazer family have always wanted. But this is the problem, and this is why I say the process is very complicated, and it's very hard to explain in terms of how conversions and different rates work, especially with the Glazer family of the registered of Manchester United's, documentation as a company and as a football club in the Cayman Islands. So I could come on here and I could get into how the taxes work and how Manchester United have a 0.6 percentage that they would then get as a tax-free. So Manchester United, they don't pay any tax on what the sale comes out of it, even though it's a British asset and they're American citizens. Wow. So there is different ways that you can go around it, but taxes are taxes, and conversions are conversions. And the Glazer family, as I say, they've always insisted upon if the right money comes in, and look, if you go out above and over what they've actually requested, I think that's even better for them. Let's be honest. So even if, as the viewer had made the question to me, even if it was that they put $8.4 billion on the table, I mean, the Qatari stance when they, came in, the sort of message that was coming out around them before anybody had really established any context or sources was they can blow somebody out the water. Now, if they did something like that, that's blowing them out of the water. Yeah. And if I had to put it maybe, impolitely, I would say that's taking the piss, really. You've gone above and beyond maybe what the Glazer family would have wanted.
Sorry, that was echo. Absolutely agree, Tom. Just one thing, because obviously agree what you're saying. And going back to, I guess, Sir Jim again, because obviously you mentioned to me that they've not, the Sir Jim and Ineos group have not heard from, essentially they've not heard from the Rain group or the Glazer family for weeks and weeks and weeks since since obviously Sheikh Jassim's premium bid sort of came in, at all. So are we led to kind of believe, because obviously this process been going on for so long, and apologies to everyone in the chat. Obviously I'm just as frustrated as you are. But surely if they haven't been in contact with Sir Jim and Ineos for weeks at all, there's been zero engagement. Surely that Sir Jim is not the preferred bidder, and Sir Jim is probably going to lose. It doesn't make sense to me. If you're negotiating with somebody, because as you said, before Sheikh Jassim's premium offer, they were in contact, they were in regular communication, they were frustrated with the deal. They were potentially going to announce Sir Jim, given the value Sir Jim had, the valuation that Sir Jim had for the club. That was going to happen sometime after the FA Cup final. Now it's basically just been sort of radio silence, and there's been no silence at all. I just can't see how Sir Jim has a foot in this race anymore. Would you agree, or is it it's hence the sort of game over Sir Jim in the title? I don't see how it comes back from this, and you would think that if he was still interested, he would have or because presumably this Ineos camp know by now that Sheikh has made a substantial increase in the offer. So if they're not going to respond and not responded by now, what do you think? What's going on?
Well, when Sheikh Jassim put in the fourth improved offer, they didn't flinch at it. When they put in the fifth, and as it had been quoted, a premium offer, there was obviously reports that were coming out and around, France and in and around Nice, stating that if Sir Jim was to be unsuccessful, the funds that he was going to use to acquire Manchester United, he was going to invest into Nice. Like, there were certain things where it was almost as if they were painting a picture of, life after the Manchester United sale process, really, from Sir Jim's camp. And the one thing from the Ineos side that we discussed last time was Dave Brailsford had played a big influential role within in Ineos's group delegation bid to buy Manchester United. And the one thing that he'd always been quoted saying in and around the groups and in chats with other influential figures around the bid was that he believed that they had potentially been used as a pawn in a bigger game of chess. That was the words that were quoted to myself, and I look at that and I think, the feeling around it from the outside looking in, that's what it looks like to, I guess, a lot of supporters, businessmen, analysts. That's how it looks, and that's how it feels. But on the Ineos side, there is a growing concern over their chances of buying Manchester United. And as you said, that they had full dialogue, they had day-to-day communication for weeks. But ever since Sheikh Jassim's fifth bid, as you say, there's been radio silence. And whenever that happens, especially when you're negotiating day in, day out, you're always on the phone, you're always, emailing, you've got your lawyers involved, you're full throttle trying to thrash out an agreement, trying to get a deal over the line. And when you're in an auction and to buy just even a projected business or a football club in this case, and, you're wanting to, buy it and you've been negotiating for weeks to try and find an agreement, and then communication stops all of a sudden from the selling side or the advertiser side in rain, it's never a good look, and it's not a good sign, really, because when you're having full dialogue to then nothing completely, and obviously the Ineos side, they have been reaching out to Rain and trying, open the communication line again, for which it hasn't been established ever since. So you look at that and you think there is two ways that you can look at it, and one of the theories that was put to us from one of our sources was that it was perceived as being a tactic by Rain and the Glazer family, and Ineos had believed this, and this was the sort of theory after the communication was cut off, because obviously, as you say, they will have known that Sheikh Jassim put this fifth offer in. Like, they're not stupid. I think they read the papers. If not, they'll have been told by somebody in the process or who's a liaison for that side of the bidding, and it had been perceived as maybe being a tactic to get another bid out from Ineos and that delegation and group, but that's been dismissed from a lot of US sources that we've been using. But this all comes really after documentation had been filed to Rain, and this was after the third round of bids, and it was resubmitted around similar time in just before Sheikh Jassim put the fourth improved offer in, where the Ineos delegation had filed documentation to Rain insisting, in terms of the contract and the structure of their bid, they had strict terms in terms of they wanted the control. That was a non-negotiable part of any sale to them, that they must have control of the football club. The Class A to Class B shareholding exchanges, and in terms of how the Glazer family would have to take the inserted clause around the Class B shares, for which only Glazer family members can own, which ultimately has 10 times the voting rights of a Class A share, for which Sir Jim Ratcliffe would need to have full control of the football club, rather than the Glazer family, for which, as I say, is not it's non-negotiable. And third and finally, the Ineos side, for which you didn't know before, but we've been confirmed now, is around the New York Stock Exchange legislation case battle. If Ineos as a group and for their bid and that they've submitted are to be sued upon grounds of manipulating the New York Stock Exchange markets, they have in place a senior legal counsel that has been hired on standby by INEOS if any agreement isn't struck either with New York Stock Exchange themselves or its stockbrokers which own shares of Manchester United. And the way that they would want to have an agreement with them so they avoid a big legal case and battle would be to have a three-way partnership holding of ownership of Manchester United, for which this would keep Manchester United as a publicly traded company. So you would have the Glazers might own 20%, you have Sir Jim that owns 50%, and you have the other 30% that is to the stakeholders on New York Stock Exchange, which can still be traded. So effectively, it would be business as usual. You just have a third party that's involved in the ownership, which isn't common around New York Stock Exchange, but it has happened before with other companies. That's the best way I can describe that. And for which we reached out to, I reached out to my friend anyway, who's worked in New York Stock Exchange for upwards of 5-6 years, and we spoke to another expert who'd worked and has experience within working in New York Stock Exchange and how you evaluate and value companies based on stocks. And we'd worked in partnership with them covering the Chelsea takeover, and it had been insisted that if a legal battle will take place, meaning New York Stock Exchange and its stakeholders who own shares in Manchester United, the sort of message from that side of things in terms of New York Stock Exchange was that they will not back down. Like, if a legal challenge happens, it's going to happen, and they're prepared to go for a fight against the INEOS group and the Glazer family around they've manipulated the market. And one word that was quoted to us was they won't be given hush money and told to move on. They'll go full throttle and they'll get the big bills if they want to get them in terms of a legal case against Sir Jim Ratcliffe. And like I say, it doesn't help Sir Jim's bid for that and for that reason, but it also doesn't help the Glazer family because they might not end up getting the full payout of what they want from Sir Jim and the INEOS group in the long term. Hence, as we've reiterated before, the pendulum swings more towards Sheikh Jassim. It's a one instalment payment. So take it or leave it. If you pick us, we're prepared to negotiate terms and maybe restructuring in terms of an extra financing in terms of the deal. But aside from that, if you don't pick us, good luck to you going with anybody else. That's the sort of message from that side of things. But all in all around Sir Jim Ratcliffe, there is a growing concern because, as you say, the communication has been cut off when they had direct and full dialogue for weeks on end, and they were negotiating for weeks, but they never came to an agreement. And I look at that and I think, if you can't come to an agreement in weeks, like, if that would have maybe been on the other side of things and it would have been towards Sheikh Jassim, like, and his delegation, would there be an agreement in place right now if they would have had weeks and weeks of, hard cut negotiations? We don't know. But the one thing that we can say is this fifth premium bid has blown the door wide open to this whole takeover saga because it's gone really, really quiet. And I know I said this and reiterated this after the third round of bids. After the third round of bids, it will go really quiet and you'll hear nothing and it'll go stum. And when it went stum for about a week or two, that's the sort of time when people talk. And as I say, the Glazer family have decided upon them that they get $1 billion each, they'll sell. And they'll sell rapidly, quickly, gone. And that's what I mean by when it goes quiet, because people are talking privately. And when it goes private, nothing hardly ever comes out. And the mainstream media, as I say, don't ever really pick up on these things and report upon them because it's not something that the next outlet's reporting or the other outlet's reporting. And it is about reputation and it is about, respect as journalists or, as news outlets. You have to weigh the pros and the cons of putting something out there. So all in all with the Glazer family, it has been a success really from their side of things. They got what they wanted coming into this. They got a bidding war.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
They didn't get the bidding war that they were expecting. They fought 5-6 different parties, not one of them who can only buy half and the other one who can, if you like, effectively blow the other out of the water if they wanted to, is the sort of positioning that we're in with the two parties right now. But that's the position that is in for Manchester United, and at the end of the day, it's based upon the high valuation the Glazer family put on Manchester United. Because if they put it at something reasonable, maybe 4.5, 5, I think you'd have had a lot more interested parties in trying to buy Manchester United. Because, as I say, Sir Jim Ratcliffe can only get $5 billion.
That's the funny thing about it. It's like, to be honest, if they'd actually set the valuation a bit lower, they may have actually ended up getting, like, that's what's so stupid about the way it gets done. Because if they set the valuation, they should say, I don't know, 5 billion, for example, maybe 4.5 to 5 billion. You know that would have brought in more investors, and of course that would have created the bidding war, which would have potentially led them to actually get the 6 billion that they're going to get in the first place. But instead, so that's why it's like, so it never made sense. It's like, you don't set, if you want a bidding war, you don't set a extremely high valuation, i.e. the valuation will make United the most expensive club purchase in sporting history if you want a bidding war. So it never made sense. So I was like, the only reason I can think they set the valuation that high is because certainly John Avram at the time definitively did not want to leave Manchester United. They were just like, okay, this is the value that we'd sell or whatever. But really and truly, we don't really want to leave. We still want to have some form of value in the club. That's why we're setting the valuation so high. I.e., you give us an offer that we can't completely refuse. But the idea of them creating a bidding war, you know, while setting high valuation, for me was always complete nonsense, you know. So, but you know, that's just my 2 cents. But yeah, so go on.
No. Yeah, probably completely agree with you, G. And I think the one thing that we knew from, especially from the Chelsea thing, there was a lot of investment coming from America to the Premier League, like Bournemouth, Southampton, Chelsea. You know, there's probably more that I haven't mentioned that have, you know, US investment money coming into the Premier League, and the US see the Premier League as a good market because of the TV right deals. And, you know, if you get the higher echelons of qualification and staying in the league, the money in the Premier League is only going up in terms of what you can make. So I think for a lot of clubs and for a lot of businessmen, especially in America, it's a good investment to buy a Premier League club. And to buy the biggest one in Manchester United, I mean, as I say, it's a commercial, you know, giant. It's the biggest within the Premier League, hands down. And it will be for, you know, years to come. But as we say, it depends on the success on the football field as well, not just in terms of the marketing and commercial side of the football club. So
obviously we talked quite a bit about, and obviously for those, I mean, Scott Hutchinson, we'll obviously come to that question at the end. We'll obviously come to the question. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Really appreciate it. Or to the regulars as well, Jamie, John, etc. So we've obviously talked quite a bit, essentially about Sir Jim and why it seems to be increasingly unlikely that he will be the next owner of Manchester United. So just a brief kind of update regarding how Sheikh Jassim's camp is. You know, we're not really essentially since they've submitted their premium bid, we've not heard much from Sheikh Jassim either, in terms or the sort of Qatar delegation, aside from the fact that they seem to be very confident that a deal will be done. So can you give us a bit more information about what the Sheikh Jassim camp is doing right now? And, you know, are they sort of closer to sort of, you know, setting up things and, you know, that type of thing?
Yeah, well, in terms of, as you say, with Sheikh Jassim's side, there is a complete radio silence. And I mean, there's not even a pin drop, really, of, you know, news or leaks coming out regarding the takeover. And really, for which that's normally a sign of, you know, respect and, you know, that they're confident, as they don't feel that they have to engage with the public or media outlets to, not to speculate, but to give an update, really. Why give an update on something if you don't feel like you have to, because you feel like you're in a strong position? Why do you, as I say, the same thing was for Sir Jim for weeks. He didn't hardly put anything out there, really. It was all from the Qatari side because they weren't really winning the race at the time. So all in and around that, the sort of confirmation that we got from the Sheikh Jassim side was, you know, that his fifth bid, as we say, had been described as a premium, and it really shook the negotiating table, and it caused a radio silence between Ineos and Rain. As we say, negotiations had taken, weeks, and no agreement had been reached in terms of what had.
Ooh. I think we just lost Tom there. Apologies. 2 seconds. Let's see if we can get Tom back. I'll just message him, but yeah, we'll hope. Just lost Tom, but hopefully we'll be back in a few minutes. So while I will just wait for Tom to come back, I'll just quickly have a read through your comments, and shout out to those in the chat while we continue. Shout out to those who obviously tuned into the season review on Monday. I know it wasn't Takeover news or anything like that, but shout out to those in the community who did. So I don't just do Takeover news on the channel. I cover other stuff United related. So please stay tuned for that. Shout out to Lucky Singh in the chat as well. Saying Sheikh Jassim, we want that money immediately. Obviously, Satu saying a lot of people saying Glazers out. Jamie, obviously, I want some good news. I'm hoping that this is good news, because while this is not a definitive, while this isn't by any means definitive. At the end of the day, this is and what I kind of wanted to get across with this stream with Tom today was that it's getting increasingly unlikely that the momentum effectively is with Sheikh Jassim. And I think anyone kind of thinking that, yes, we've not heard anything, but it's going into the we don't know, etc. I think this reassures people that actually Sheikh Jassim is in the driving seat. And at the end of the day, if you're a Manchester United fan like myself that wants the Glazers out, wants a completely and totally new start, because that's what Qatar and Sheikh Jassim will give Manchester United. They'll give Manchester United. Okay, yeah, he's just had a power outage. That's why. So he'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, so he'll be back in a few minutes. Yeah. Tom. So Qatar gives Manchester United a new beginning. A new beginning. Now, I don't think that because let's keep it as that, guys. Anyone thinking that, I'm going to post a video about this. Anyone thinking that we're going to be doing bits in the transfer window and we're going to be doing well next season, it's not going to happen, unfortunately, guys. It's not going to happen. We need to take our L and take things from there. At the end of the day, I don't see this process being completed before the beginning of next season fully. I just don't think that's going to happen, unfortunately. So the reality is that, but the reality is that long term, with Qatar and Sheikh Jassim being the owners of Manchester United, they'll be able to take us forward, and we can take the hit next season and go forward. But I see this, like I said, I see this right now as confirmation that, to reiterate essentially what Tom said while I'm waiting for him to come back, is that Sheikh Jassim, for those who obviously who are tuning and coming in, Sheikh Jassim is still in the driving seat. The reality is that the Rain Group and the Glazers have not been in contact with Sir Jim for several weeks now, almost approaching a month right now. They've not been in contact with the group at all. But the difference is that, unlike with Sheikh Jassim, when Sir Jim was silent and we heard bid after bid from Sheikh Jassim, we've not heard from a bid from the Sir Jim camp because they don't have the money to bid again. So while Sir Jim's offer still stands, there's been no change in his initial offer, his initial valuation of Manchester United, which is basically 3 billion for 50% of the club effectively, and to keep the Glazers. That hasn't changed. So I would say, if you're a United fan, I think you can be confident, you can relax. It's annoying. The Takeover saga is draining, but you can at least be relaxed and confident knowing that really and truly it would take a massive turn of events for the situation to change. Right, Tom is back. Hold on, everyone. Hey, Tom, buddy. Okay.
Yeah. Apologies. Foul
No
play.
worries. No worries, mate. No worries. It happens. I had mine as well. Just yesterday. So, but just quick shout. Yeah, shout out to Ilias in the chat as well. Gene as well, who I know has been there. And obviously several others in the chat. Oh yeah, yeah. I know. I've changed the thumbnail now. I realized actually as I was launching, this isn't Sheikh Jassim. So I did change the thumbnail again. And shout out to Zoyteng TV in the chat as well, and everyone else in the chat who's been following. I appreciate it. Just check to see if there's any questions. Quiz, honestly, why don't they tell bidders exactly how much they want rather than wasting? I mean, they have technically. They said 6 billion. So in fairness, they did do that. Arsenal just signed Declan Rice. Really? Is that confirmed on Twitter? I don't. Last time I checked, it was it was a bidding war between Arsenal and City. I don't see any confirmation from it as of yet. So definitely not from Jim Ornstein. Yeah, Arsenal just signed Rice. Like I said, I don't see any journalists, either Fabrizio or Ornstein. No one has said it. I'd be very, very surprised for Arsenal to get a. Oh, okay, I see. I've just okay, Ornstein. Okay, yeah, Ornstein said Arsenal tonight submitted a massive offer to West Ham for England midfielder Declan Rice. Proposal is for 100 million plus 5 million add-ons would be record British player as tried to agree deal with. I see. That's why people are saying he signed. Yeah. Yeah, it's not confirmed, but
Nope.
I'd be interested to see if Manchester City match that offer. Because if Manchester City don't match the offer, then yeah, I from my understand, West Ham wanted 100 million. They want, and so if City don't match that offer, then he will effectively be a Arsenal player. So there you go. So yeah, fair enough. Clutch again. Jason Lockett says, going off the figures put out today, do you think the Glazers would want to be out before spending on transfers now the credit card is coming down? I think that's due to the financial. Do you know much about that, Tom? The financial figures released today.
Yeah, well, I'm not a financial expert. And I'm not going to come in here and pretend that I am. But from what I know in terms of Manchester United, I think it's one of the record commercial revenues, especially for Q2 of the financial year. And around with Manchester United, as we said, from last season, they barely made really a profit. And going off of this season where they had the success of, they won a trophy, so that obviously commercially boosts them in terms of they have a winning club, they've won something, and having that for a lot of the sponsors is a good way to keep them on side. You know, you have a successful team which, you know, is winning a trophy, albeit it might not be the big ones. It's a trophy at the end of the day, and also getting back into the Champions League and what that brings with the Champions League money. But, you know, the strengthening of the UEFA TV rights around, you know, the deals that Manchester United can get from that, you know, it brings a lot of more money back into the football club, as I say. And as I alluded to before, it gave the Glazer family now the option of, if they wanted to pull the whole plug on the wholesale thing, they could, and they still have the financing in place to spend this window as the owners, and also it would sustainably see them through till next season. And you will look at that and you think that's obviously not a good sign for Manchester United, but in terms of having success on the field, I think that's what Manchester United fans care about more. It's a football club. And yes, you have the ownership of the Glazer family in terms of the money that they bring in. And I think, you know, it's cliche really to say, I think if you're winning on the field, it helps make more money for the football club. And I don't think anybody really told the Glazer family what a football club or a sports club is there to do. When you're successful, you're going to be making money. You're going to be, you know, winning things. You're going to be having, you know, big sponsorship deals, big advertisement deals for your club or for, you know, that want to sponsor your team. But really ineffectively, because they've made such a poor job of how Manchester United have been run over the last few seasons, and they haven't appointed the right directors in place to maybe get the best players in the world, or the right manager at the right time, and certain things like that, and fully backing them. They haven't had that sustained success on the football field, and really and ultimately, to I guess break it down, is if the Glazer family maybe put more of an effort in terms of making the team better, and they had a successful model which worked in terms of Man United were competing for trophies year in, year out, and Premier League, Champions League, it would sustainably, it would probably keep the fans on side, because you have a fan base which is excited for the team, but you also have a club which is winning and succeeding. Therefore, it brings prize money, it brings advertisement, it brings bigger and better TV deals, and also it brings more legacy and history to your football club, for which you would be a part of as the owner. But obviously, there is a murky and dark side to the Glazer family's ownership. We can't deny in saying that. But around the question in terms of would the Glazer family want to be, out before spending? I mean, even if you had a new owner in place, as I say tomorrow, they can't really impact this transfer window at all. Whether it's Sheikh Jassim, Sir Jim, or it was us at Red Devil Studio, like nobody can really influence this transfer window. And the reason why is because the FFP, the financial fair play rules, Man United are on the amber list. Chelsea were on the red list, and they've now dropped to the green list with the amount of sales that they've done, in terms of they've reduced the wage bill, but they've also reduced the actual investment that they put in of £600 million. So effectively, Chelsea have balanced the books, really, for which Manchester United need to do to sell a lot of players. And really, to have a successful window, Man United need to recoup at least 80 million, if not 100, in player sales. And it's going to have to be the biggest selling summer that Manchester United have ever had as a football club, because I don't think they've raked in really that amount of money for years. And yeah, you can go back to maybe the Lukaku money you got from Inter Milan, but Inter is still paying that money off. So you didn't really get the full deal. And because how things are structured nowadays, in terms of clubs don't just pay a set fee, they like to pay it over a few years. United ain't going to exactly see all the money come back in. And this is why I guess the stance that Man United are taking in terms of some of the transfers, they're having to stick and just go with it, say with what's happening with Mason Mount, where they said 55 and that's it. They don't want to go anymore, because I'm sure they've got a budget of what they want to pay for each player. Just like I say with Harry Kane, they had a budget, £80 million, and it wasn't even going to get Daniel Levy out of bed. So hence they haven't pursued that deal, and maybe Bayern Munich have, because they have more money available to the table and they're not a Premier League rival. So in terms of the Glazer family having an impact on the window, what's done is done. Like, the damage had already been done, summer after summer after summer ago, when Man United overpaid for players and undersell players, and FFP has caught up with them. And as I say, unless Manchester United sustainably sell players for a reasonable value and rake in 80 to 100 million, I don't really see that there's going to be a major influx of players that are going to come through the door, or maybe the kind of quality of players that a club like Manchester United is traditionally founded in terms of getting to their football club.
Fair play. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. Let me have a look. Yeah, so the time it will be July in a few days that we've not signed anyone. Yeah, the last time we signed a player in June was Aaron Wan-Bissaka 4 years ago. Just let that sink in. That was around the time I started my channel, I think. I think that was close around the time I started my channel. That was the last time we signed someone in June. So there you go. Against Qatar winning, definitely. Because I saw someone like Glazers say Qatar they want 6.8 billion. Sheikh Ariane says, "Big up everyone, including my Yorkshire buddy Tom. Big up, buddy." Let me, 100. We as almost 105 million.
Yeah.
For Arsenal and that. Richard Jabman says, if Sheikh Jassim's bid blows them out of the water, why not accept? What's holding up the deal? When board vote on Sheikh Jassim, when board votes on Sheikh Jim's bid, board meet before AGM, which is tomorrow. Our Glazers talk with Sheikh Jim. Why do you think he's leading? Would you be able to kind of almost like summarize that, Tom?
Well, you don't blow somebody out of the water if you. I don't know if it's going to sound maybe a bit disrespectful towards the gym's bid. Is why blow somebody out of the water when you know they don't have the finances to compete with you to buy the whole thing? And as they say, if the gym had the finances to buy the whole thing, he would. And he, as I've always referred to, he came into this process believing that he was going to be the only one at the table for the deal, and hence the Glazer family had set an evaluation of ridiculous figures. And like I say, the only way you can really compete, and I say this for anybody really, when you have somebody from the Middle East, and listen, they don't have to have state money behind them because they have brothers, they have mothers, they have fathers who have connections or, further finances or investments which have assets worth billions of pounds. And I just look at someone like Sheikh Jassim and I think he's played it. I think he's played it well, really. And yeah, it has taken maybe 5 bids to get somewhere close to where the Glazer family want, if not maybe bang on it. But the only reason why I can say I don't think he's come into this process and just gone out there stupidly and said, I want to blow them out of the water is, I think he has a price cap on what he wanted to pay for this football club. And really, if I'm being honest, I think the price cap he would have paid would maybe have been about 4.5. So I think going out on an arm and a leg to further extend to another 1.5 billion to meet the Glazer family's evaluation, I think it's a big step. And I think ultimately, in terms of blowing somebody out of the water, like if this is, it's been, portrayed a state-backed bid for which, from my understanding, is that it's not. It's just wealthy Qatari individuals, one of them who's been named in Sheikh Jassim and his father, and there is more to follow upon if they were to be confirmed as buying and, the owners of Manchester United, for which at this time the other, high net worth individuals who are around the offer and the bid from Sheikh Jassim and the Qatar side, they don't have to be named at this point. And really you can say that as a credibility thing in case they didn't get it or whatever. And in terms of, what the hold-up is, well, the Glazer family, this is the biggest decision in their life. Like, maybe even before, deciding to have kids, deciding to buy Manchester United in the first place. Like, I think this is the biggest decision that they're ever going to make. This is going to make them billions either way that they look. Sir Jim's way, even though it, involves maybe a legal case, and if they think they can win, then they get to stay as well. Or you have a big blowout offer in Sheikh Jassim, for which I think really the Glazer family have always really looked at the Middle East as a way out of getting out of Manchester United if they were ever going to sell. For example, whenever they've, been in the public eye, for example, there's been, sightings when they've been at, cricket auctions to buy, into the Indian Cricket League, for example, when there was a summit in Saudi Arabia and they spoke to Saudi investors, one of whom is on the board of PAF, and PAF obviously bought Newcastle. There was a deal that was being structured where the Glazer family at the time were prepared to sell, I think it was 25% of Manchester United shares to Saudi Arabia, but they wanted £700 million. And I look at that and I think, well, PAF they wanted to buy a full football club. Saudi Arabia wanted to have a full football club. They didn't want to buy a percentage. They wanted a full thing. And hence they went and bought Newcastle out and they have the majority shareholding there. And, there is, like I say, positionings in terms of with the Glazer family on where they believe they can get the most money. And they know that the Middle East men and the men from the Far East, they can give them stupid money because they have stockpiles of it. But they look at things as an investment as much as they do just purchasing something for the kindness of their heart. Everybody looks at something as an investment, especially when you're spending billions. But people spend billions and they regret it, or people spend billions and they fall in love with it. Roman Abramovich is the perfect example. He was, really close to buying Tottenham Hotspur, for example, pulled out of the deal last minute and went and bought Chelsea and, fell in love with Chelsea Football Club. And, the rest is bon voyage. And you just look at stuff like that and I think ultimately as well, when you go into the question in terms of when it goes to the board and the sort of meeting there, before the AGM tomorrow is that the board members are obviously going to vote in terms of the ownership and stuff, and because obviously New York Stock Exchange will play a hand in that, I'm sure they'll have a say in terms of who their preference is. And if I'm being completely honest, I think based upon what the stocks and the influxation of them have been stating, I think there is a preference towards Sheikh Jassim. I don't think that's hidden or common knowledge. And to further add the point in terms of the Glazer family had a direct contact line with Sheikh Jassim's delegation directly from themselves, as we reported ages ago when Sir Jim, the Glazer family obviously went directly to Nasser Al Khalifi, and that story sort of evolved from there. And they wanted him to play a middleman role, which he didn't do, but he made a few phone calls back home, and long and behold, there was a fourth bid, and now there's a fifth bid on the table from Sheikh Jassim. So, there is ways to look at it, and why he's leading the bid in races because it's a premium offer, and the valuations in terms of what's being told from the US side of things is this is the biggest bid to buy all of the Glazer family out. And you can say, well, it's the only bid that can buy them all out, yes, but you also have to look at it from the sake of Sir Jim Ratcliffe has valued Manchester United at a stupid price at half of what the football club. And the reason why you've got to do that is to compete. So really, to compete, you have to overvalue what a percentage is worth if you can't buy the whole thing, which is a smart hand to do. But if then your competitor values it similar to then buy all of it, well, suddenly they can buy all of it for near enough the same money that you want to buy half of it for, and then maybe buy all of it for in the long term. So there is a process in place there. But the thing is that, especially with Sheikh Jassim's side of things, the 92 Foundation have always insisted that this is their final bid. And they said there's no negotiation clause, we're pulling that from the deal and that's it. But if you pick us and we have either an exclusive period or you accept our offer outright, we're willing to reopen negotiations unless we're given, assurances and, legal documentation to state that we are the only bidder on the table, for which throughout the whole process, that's never been approved by anybody, Rain, the Glazer family, anybody. And from what I know, especially from Sheikh Jassim's side, from people from within that we use in terms of the Middle East, is him personally, he's said to be taking a laid-back approach to the process. He's played not a major influential role, but he's obviously advised, what to bid and when to bid and certain things. He's the leader of the whole group, but he's put his faith and trust in his lawyers, his advisors, and his delegation, in the last 10 days. And, the one thing that we know in terms of it, just before anywhere got cut off, that I was going to lead on to was the 92 Foundation have put preparations in order for the eventuality that they are chosen to be the selected group. And from what we knew anyway, in terms of what we was told today, was paperwork and sort of legal documentation is being drawn up really as we were speaking at the time around midday today, and probably will still be going on throughout the night with how lawyers and advisors work on big £1 billion, contracts and deals. Contracts and documents are being drawn up and written up on the Qatari side with the addresses towards the Premier League, UEFA and the Rain Group, with legalities and the evidence of the proof of funds and how the payment structure is going to work out in terms of a buyout, which in terms of the buyout, and that's more aimed towards Rain and New York Stock Exchange around the commitment investment, $1 billion, £800 million that goes straight into Manchester United, how the debt gets cleared, so that then I guess covers the Premier League problem in terms of you can't use leverage buyout, and that would satisfy them. And then the only thing that you've left got to do then is just prove that you're aside from the folks that run PSG. And from what I know anyway around Sheikh Jassim and his delegation, was they wouldn't have come in this process if they didn't feel like they could pass it through the governing bodies. So really and ultimately, I think, there is a thought process of, after we purchase Manchester United or after we get selected, they're putting things in place, and really that showcases confidence within their bid and that they're prepared to move quickly if they are accepted either for exclusive talks to renegotiate in terms of maybe more money being put on the table, but it's just them that's there. There is no Sir Jim Ratcliffe another offer. There is no, an Elon Musk last minute bid. There's nothing like that. It's just them.
Mhm.
Or, as you say, the direct bid that they'd made from their latest offer, the fifth offer, if they want to just accept that straight away, and that's it. So, long and behold, I think, especially from the Glazer family's sort of side, as we reported last time, was they took the threat, or whatever you want to use it, the warning from Sheikh Jassim that this is the final bid and that's the end of negotiations. They took it to heart, and they believe that is and was really what he had insisted upon. But from what we know anyway around the 92 Foundation and what they were communicating was, that is the stance in terms of the fifth offer, and it's not going to change. We're not going to flip-flop and do a U-turn, but we're also prepared to renegotiate terms, but you're only speaking to us if we do so. So they want assurances to reopen that negotiations if it is ever to be opened, but if not, well, they've got the sword that they can fall back on in terms of if they were, in a unsuccessful world, they weren't to buy Manchester United and maybe Sir Jim was to get it ahead of them, they can always fall back on the sword of, well, the Glazer family never wanted to sell. So there is, an entry clause in terms of they have the paperwork lined up, and being drawn up towards the different governing bodies and interested parties within the sale process. But there is also a sword that they can fall back on in terms of, well, we did all that we could, but the Glazer family just never really wanted to sell. So they went with Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who offered them a way to stay, for which we were never going to do or, comprehend to. So all in all, it does show a case for the Qatari side in terms of there's confidence. You wouldn't draw up these things for no reason. But I would probably anticipate, even though I don't know it for sure, that Ineos will probably be doing a similar thing or might have the exact same thing in place around satisfying the Premier League, UEFA. You're going to have to negotiate, as I say, with New York Stock Exchange to avoid a legal battle, certain things like that. So, you're putting everything in place in the eventuality that you're chosen to be preferred bidder. And if you get the green light, well, either or of the groups I would expect will want to go full throttle with it with how long the sale process has taken as it is right now.
Thanks for that, Tom. Man, thanks for that. I appreciate that, buddy. I'll just read some final comments and we'll obviously begin to run. If you've got any questions around the process, please get them in the chat comments as we begin to round up. See if there's anything. PSG links are only. Okay. There's a question from Kevin that says, "Are there signs we should be looking for that the club has been sold, and how do you think the sale will be announced?" Says Kevin Jones.
I think there is signs that the club, is looking more towards a sale rather than not. The only difference is it a partial sale or is it a full sale? That's the question that I can't answer because I'm not in the Glazer family's minds. But in terms of how the sale could be announced, I don't think really that the Glazer family would put themselves in the public eye in terms of they'll make an announcement via, as they did when they said that they were looking for outside investment, strategic alternatives, as they put it. And the way that they publicly put that out there, if they were to do that for a sale, I don't believe that would be a good way to look at business, because I think you can say that you have an agreement in place with Sheikh Jassim, with Sir Jim Ratcliffe, but if that deal then falls through or the party want to pull out, then, or you want to pull out in that case because you don't agree with the terms or maybe a last minute change of heart in terms of things change or things have moved and there's spinning plates, really and ultimately then, well, you're stuck with it. And you've put something out there that then you've gone back on. And as I say, you imagine the backlash that you would get, for example, there's a lot of support behind Sheikh Jassim's bid, more so than there is to Jim Ratcliffe. I think that's common knowledge for anybody to know. But if you put out there a scenario that you'd agree to deal with Sheikh Jassim and then you have to backtrack, in weeks or maybe in a month or so's time and state and insist that the agreement's been terminated, or you haven't processed the sale, and the deal's off, or something like that. Like, the backlash and the reaction that would give to Manchester United fans, I think, would be an all-time low, really, in terms of the Glazer family's tenure. And it's not out of their nature. We have to be honest in saying that. So, if I had to be honest, I think privately things would the relevant people would know privately, and I think you get an engagement of which way it's going to go, even if it's not come out publicly, based upon who pulls out, because whichever side is giving the green light and goes forward in terms of you pass through the sale, or you negotiate exclusively with one of the parties, whomever the other party is that doesn't get selected, I'd be very surprised if they still linger around with their offer. Even if that's Sheikh Jassim, if Sir Jim Ratcliffe's selected and they go forward with him and they ignore the Qatari side completely and 9-2 Foundation, I think they'd pull and withdraw the offer straight away. In the same way, I think would be a similar scenario with Sir Jim Ratcliffe, because there is nothing else that you can do at that point, because there'll be a legally binding contract to insist to state we're only negotiating, or we're only speaking to this group, and legally you can't break that agreement when it's in place and both parties have signed it. That would be the Glazer family and whoever they decide to pick. So, all in all, in terms of an announcement, I think the relevant people would know privately, but until the deal is actually and physically ready to go and it's been passed by the Premier League, UEFA, and everybody else, I don't see that or envision there being a big media blow up, and Twitter will blow up, whether it be Sheikh Jassim or Sir Jim Ratcliffe or the Glazer family have sold Man United after 18 years. You know the headlines, and it's running through your head as we speak now. The sort of headlines, or what you might want the reporters or journalists like myself to come on say this platform and insist and say what the headline is or what the update is. So I think everybody will know relevantly privately, but I don't think anything will be publicly announced until you are probably days away from actually having it passed through and signed on the dotted line, and you have an ownership change.
That's fair, buddy. Thank you very much, mate. I see a question from OK David. I know you said is Sir Jim the new owner of the, not official, not confirmed or officially
No.
confirmed yet. No. Who is going to be Manchester United captain next season? Well, I suspect it'll be Bruno, because I'm not entirely sure what Harry Maguire is going to be doing, if at all. No worries, Kevin. No worries. Like I said, guys, just like Tom is has just been very reliable coming regarding the takeover process, and he's not biased. He's not sensationalist. He gives very, very concise and concrete information. And that's why I have him on the channel. That's why I really encourage you guys to follow him on his Twitter. It's this Twitter page as well. So I guess finally, the question that obviously we always ask at the end is, when do you think it will be done? Who do you think, Tom, will be the new owner of Manchester United? Like, what do you think, buddy?
Oh, do you know something? Anybody who has money.
Oh, sorry. Sheikh Sharon says you didn't answer my question. Was it this one? PSG links are BS who is the MA's linked, and also is that the question, Sheikh? I can't really see the question there.
Well, Sheikh Tamim is obviously the Emir of Qatar.
Yeah.
And the Emir has been pictured, and obviously with QS, I'll just explain it anyway. PSG as a football club is owned by QSI, which is Qatar Sports Investment, which is the sporting project of QIA, which is the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Qatar Investment Authority. So when I said before about the investments that they have in Barclays, in Volkswagen, in Sainsbury's, QIA, the Sovereign Wealth Fund, funds those investments in the same way that they funded QSI's takeover of Paris Saint-Germain Football Club. So Nasser Al-Khalifi, as I say, for example, with being the PSG president, has a role on the QIA board, has a role with, he's the president of Qatar Sports Investment, involvement with UEFA. So in terms of the PSG links, as I say, Sheikh Jassim's, mantra and wording from the Delegate 92 Foundation coming into this was, we wouldn't have entered the process if we didn't believe we could pass it through all of the relevant governing bodies. And I think they've come this far to have a UEFA or a Premier League or somebody else to stand in the way of them doing so. And as I say, there isn't really a lot that can be said or done. And as I say, like, as far as my understanding is, it's not a state-backed bid.
Sorry, Tom.
You
Sorry,
go on.
he says. God, let me just scroll back up. He says the one, I think, with the HBG. So I assume what he's saying is, so would his Sheikh Jassim in second bid to buy? Would his father be part of the project? I assume that's the question. What 10 the games was for United. So would his father be involved in the whole process? I think is the point.
His father's played a leading role within the process from the Qatari delegation side, and you can look at it for what it is. It's his son at the end of the day, and I think you want to do something by your son. And in the beginning, his father was against the investment, and he was against bidding for a football club because he didn't see the value in owning a football club or investing in it. Even as I say, with his father HBJ, former Prime Minister of Qatar, and everything, like, he was completely against the Qatar World Cup. He didn't believe it was a good use of Qatar as money that they used. I think they pumped nearly £200 billion into the whole infrastructure, transport links, everything for the actual World Cup to host it. He thought that it wasn't a valid way to advertise Qatar as a country, and yeah, he might have been proved wrong in that case in terms of it's put Qatar on the map. But in terms of HBJ himself, from what I know anyway, he's financially supported his son's bid, but he's also advised his son not to be ripped off. And that's the one thing that I've always known around HBJ. Whenever it comes to any of his family or friends, he will support them in terms of if he believes it's right or he believes it's okay. And as I say, he voiced his concerns at the beginning, but as time's going on, it's grown on him, and he's prepared to put in his own money as his father for his son to support his bid, but also give his expertise and knowledge in terms of he has a lot more, phone contacts. He has a lot more contacts within Qatar. And as I say, there is other high net worth individuals around the Sheikh Jassim bid for which haven't been named at this time. And I look at that and I think, I don't honestly think Sheikh Jassim is the sort of person who has those sort of contacts, if I'm being completely honest. I think that's more towards his father, who, as I say, former Prime Minister of Qatar, he's going to know a lot of people, a lot of serious, either businessmen or individuals who have links to the state or had links to the state and whatnot, who will have money to invest. He knows other investors. So in terms of his father, supporting his son's bid, absolutely, he's part of the project in terms of bidding for the football club. And I think, upon buying the football club, I wouldn't expect them to be there week in, week out. I don't think they'll do a Todd Bowling. They'll be there every single week to watch a Manchester United game. But reasonably, if it fits their progress and their course to do so, I think they'd come to plenty of games. For example, if Sheikh Jassim was the Manchester United owner, I'm sure he would have been in, the owner's box for the Carabao Cup final where Avram Glazer was, or his father would have been, or one of his representatives would have been there to show a voice, to show a face of the 92 Foundation or the ownership group that's bought Manchester United. And as far as I'm aware with Sheikh Jassim, the early voices that I heard when he, this is going back months though, was he would have been prepared to come to Manchester to watch one of the games. This was in and around the bidding process, but he was expecting that obviously he was going to have an agreement ages ago, and probably the same thing with Sir Jim. And I think upon either or of them getting the football club, I think more so maybe towards Sheikh Jassim's side is, I think he would not break cover, so to speak, but I think he would come into the public eye if he bought Manchester United, because, you're putting a lot of money into something that you're not even prepared to show your face to. Like, I think it's, I think it'd be a bit arrogant, really, if you put £6 billion or something stupid on the table, you bought something for like that, and you don't even want to have a look at it. Like, have a look at the stadium, what you own now. Like, have a look at the training ground. See the players that you pay a wage to now. Like, I think you'd be stupid not to look at your own labour or your fruition of what you've bought. But in terms of his father, I think his father again, like, he's retired, ex-prime minister. Like, he's not got. Obviously, he's got day-to-day things to do, and he's got other investments. Absolutely, but I'm sure a family trip or something, family visit, see how things are going as an ownership group. And as I say, until we get to that point, it's very hard to know or to judge if Sheikh Jassim would come to a game or any things like that. But I think personally, anyway, if I had to give a prediction, I think he would. And I think, his father, I think a lot of his advisors, and look, you might even get a lot more maybe Qataris who follow football, who, love football really, who might travel to Manchester. So you might get more fans come from the Middle East to come and watch Manchester United based upon that it's owned by an individual from that state or from, that region. That will bring, viewers, that will bring, people across the channel, across the, Europe to come and watch Manchester United. So there is ways that you can look at it, but I think ultimately, I think he would look at it and think, yeah, let's go to the odd game. And look, if it's a special game, for example, Sheikh Mansour, I don't think he'd been to a Manchester City game, since he bought the club in like 13 years. And then he went to the Champions League final where Manchester City obviously won it against Inter Milan and completed the treble. That was a historical moment in that club's history, really. And, it pains me to say, obviously, from a Manchester United fan's perspective also, but you look at that and you think, well, it's a similar profile of owner based upon where they come from. So there could be a situation, but look, if Manchester United's winning and there's a success on the football field and competing in the transfer market, and Man United are commercially growing as a football club, are you really going to be that bothered if somebody doesn't sit in the stand, but you've still got a lot of success? I don't see Manchester City fans throwing up in arms because they didn't have that, or they don't have that right now with Sheikh Mansour. I just see them rejoicing over a treble. So you can take it for what you will.
Yeah. Exactly, exactly, Chief. Let me see if there's any last questions, and we'll round up, guys. I saw just a few. So Jason Lockett says, when would the stock exchange need to be notified of any official sale?
They'd need to be notified. Probably, I think how it works is, if it's a publicly traded company, it's very hard to do it because I can't actually think of another major football club of the size of Manchester United that's a publicly traded company. As far as I'm aware, if I had to predict, I think you go to the Premier League, you then go UEFA, and then if there's, an exchanges, London Exchange, New York, Singapore, wherever, what exchanges you want to use, like, they obviously have to be notified, but it's not New York Stock Exchange. How can I say it? New York Stock Exchange have to be notified to then notify the stockholders in terms of then they know what they stand to gain in terms of if it goes as a privately traded company. So they know how much Manchester United has been sold to in terms of the Glazer family's 69%. They will all know how that valuation works, but they're under an NDA agreement where that can't be disclosed. Obviously, it'll be leaked out there, but there won't ever be somebody who will come out and officially say or have proof to state that's how much Manchester United has been sold for, because nobody can officially verify it legally because they'll be sued arse over tit. So really and ultimately, to answer that question, as far as I would believe it would go, without knowing too much of how New York Stock Exchange works, New York Stock Exchange would be notified probably similarly around the same time that the governing bodies would be, especially if one of the interested parties, whether it was the Glazer family or the buying group, would want to get this process wrapped up and done as quickly as possible. So I think they'd probably go to all of the different parties and, put formal letters or emails, legal documentation over as soon as possible, really.
Fair. Thanks, buddy. That's fine. Conference. Okay. I assume Retro. Are they going to redevelop Old Trafford or New Bern? I assume that will just be from. Well, I think what we can probably say about any of the Old Trafford is that, like, I mean, and maybe Tom, you could clarify this for me, is that it will be Sheikh Jassim. Presumably, will be the if we're going to get a stadium development of any kind. I imagine it will only be under Sheikh Jassim because I don't really. If Sir Jim somehow wins this, I don't know how Sir Jim has the money to invest a further, potentially up to 2 billion in redeveloping or building a new build. I don't know what to say about that, Tom.
Well, the projectors because the Glazer family had the same architects and projectors who had built and they'd sculptured the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. They hired the exact same firm and guys who did the Tottenham Stadium to evaluate Manchester United. And this is going back upwards of 12 to 18 months ago, though. The sort of figures that the Glazer family were being quoted at the time was that to redevelop Old Trafford, with how decayed and disdained it has been at this time, even with a time scale, it would have cost at least £1 billion, and then there would have been maybe 5 years to develop it, and then for a new one, you were talking upwards of 8 years to build from scratch, and that would have cost upwards of £1.5 billion, closer maybe to 2 billion, depending on what stadium capacity you want to put in. But it depends, like I say, on who's prepared to wait that long to build a new stadium. But also, as you say, there can always be complications. So there can always be, a delay or whatnot in terms of, building or redeveloping, which can take more time and cost more money. So there is, I guess, pros and cons around either of them. But either or of a redevelopment or a new build, you're talking in excess of £1 billion, easily.
Fair. Let's see. Yep. Shout out to Jimmy Milligan, by the way. Shout out to you, buddy. Let's see. Just seeing any other questions, and then we'll just round. But thank you so much, Tom. It Stephanie says, "Big up, Tom, man. Big up." Ruby says, "Game over. Eric Ten Hag has no pull. Stop it. I know you're a rival fan because you've got a Patrick Vieira thumbnail. Stop it. Relax." So, hi guys, just turned in. Apologies for lateness. What happens first takeover or first summer signing? That's actually a very interesting question. Actually, like Wilson, yeah, we've literally done. Just go back and watch it. We've literally done the to start and started. So we've literally spent the last hour talking about it. But yeah, that's a good. That's actually, in fact, that's a good final question to end the stream. Actually, thanks, Stephanie Griff. Like, what comes first of the takeover, first of a signing? I'm gonna go for actually, you know what? Actually, no, Tom, you go first because I thought the first summer
He's sitting on the fence.
I'm not confident that we'll get the Mason Mount deal. I'm not confident that we're going to get the Mason Mount deal. I think Chelsea won't budge.
But they've dropped from 65 to 60. And Man United bid 55.
55, but Man United said we're not purchasing more than 60. We're not going to go. But maybe
Chelsea
they might
down,
agree with
then...
58. They might agree with 58. Maybe, I don't know. So, but what do you think, Tom? Do you think the takeover will be first, or
signing a player is a lot easier than selling a football club? That's the one way that I'm going to look at it.
Exactly. That's what, yeah. I mean, but it's just if you think about it, knowing Manchester United's incompetence, it wouldn't surprise me if somehow we somehow got the announcement of a takeover before we signed Mason Mount, given how so much we drag over, transfer deals and stuff like that as well, so it'll just be, it'll be funny. It'll be funny. Sorry, 2 minutes. Tom, it's fine. We're rounding up anyway, so I'll just round up anyway. So, but I'll answer this question before we go. What's the update on Mason Mount? Because I can answer that, and the update is simple. Manchester United put in a bid, an offer on the table to Chelsea for £55 million for Mason Mount, and that offer is still on the table. Chelsea obviously won 60 million for Mason Mount. Manchester United, it's a difference about 5 million. Manchester United are not budging. And according to Fabrizio anyway, they're going to be coming back into they're going to be discussing Mason Mount again this week. The outcomes, I don't see Manchester United bidding over 60 million. He's not worth that. So the only thing I say is that either Chelsea go down in valuation and we get him for, say, they meet halfway, 57, 58, and United agree to that, which I still think is bad. Or we just walk away. But I suspect more likely not, because Mason Mount wants a deal, that will meet somewhere in the middle, 57, if Chelsea are happy with that. If they're not, well, then it is what it is. Lastly, Sami says, what about Harry Kane signings? Well, I can tell you this for free. Harry Kane ain't coming to Manchester United. There's no way that Daniel Levy is selling Harry Kane to a rival Premier League club. That's why the buy-in bid is interesting. Even though it was rejected by the 70 million bid was rejected by Daniel Levy. I think that if Harry Kane is to go to any club, I suspect that it will be to if Daniel Levy clearly doesn't want his price asset to go for free for next season, but he doesn't want to sell to a rival club. So I would be interested to see if Bayern Munich submit a 90 million bid, whether that might trigger Daniel Levy's interest. Personally, for me, I think he goes for 100 million, but 90, 95, if Bayern can do that, maybe that might take Daniel Levy. But I don't know what you think, Tom, about Levy and then Mount.
You mean Levy and Kane?
Sorry. Kane and Levy, and then also Mount as well. Because I briefly talked about Mount to United, that thing.
Well, probably to start off with Mount. I mean, Man United made the stance. It's £50 million up front, 5 in add-ons, and it's it totals 55, and that's it. We're not budging. And when that last bid went in, Chelsea originally was at 70. They then dropped it to 65. They've now dropped it to 60. But when they're at 60, they want to meet face-to-face with Manchester United directly to discuss potentially coming to an agreement in and around between. For which Manchester United, initially, it looked like they were dismissing to wanting to meet. They are now open to meeting, but then I don't really believe anyway, because like I say, how structured they're having to be with certain signings, I think they have a price in mind to pay for every player, and really, I think they're probably going to stick to that price. And if they can't get that price, they're going to probably move on. And that's why I say if they don't get Mount for 55, well, I think they'll go in a different market and they might go for a Caicedo in terms of, all right, well, we didn't get Mason Mount. It's fine. We'll go for Caicedo and, well, we're not getting Harry Kane, right? So the big money that we were going to spend on a striker, we'll spend it on a midfielder. We'll spend it on a goalkeeper. We'll invest it somewhere else. So I think with Mount, I think it's an interesting one. Me personally, if I had to predict, I think they will come to an agreement, if I'm being completely honest. I think it suits every party. It suits Mason Mount because he's already agreed terms. So I think when you agree personal terms with another club, I think really you burn your bridges with the club that you're at already. In terms of if the deal was to fall through and, decay. I also think it suits Chelsea to sell because they have a player that obviously doesn't want to be there. And he's, it's clear that he doesn't want to be there by agreeing terms to go somewhere else. And it obviously suits them because it suits them from a financial perspective to get investment back into their squad and transfer kitty. And it suits Manchester United because they get a player that clearly the manager wants in Erik ten Hag. But it also suits Manchester United maybe from a financial perspective because if Mason Mount works out as a signing, they might have saved themselves 80, 90 million pounds on signing someone like Mason Mount, rather than maybe going into the market and trying to have got maybe Jude Bellingham or gone into the market and get like a Camavinga, a Tchouaméni, one of these high-profile midfielders that have been on the market for the last couple of months, years, and instead of maybe failing to get one of those targets, or maybe a Caicedo this summer, instead of maybe failing to get one of those targets, they might have, fished into the pond and got a good catch in Mason Mount. Time will tell. So I think on that side of things, no knowledge, just prediction. I think United 55 and 60 is easy to come to an agreement, meet in the middle. I think really, or if somebody wants to be really stern and shrewd, I think Manchester United, if they wanted to, I think they can probably hold 55. And look, Chelsea have come from 70. They've already dropped 10 million. I think they can drop another 5. And I think that shows a willingness that they will sell the player. It just depended. It was just that they wanted stupid money, and they realised United weren't going to give them that, and they weren't going to dance to their tune. So a deal, I think, will be struck for Mason Mount, if I had to predict. In terms of Harry Kane, I think it's interesting because, as you say, Bayern Munich put the offer in. Bayern Munich, as far as I knew, a week ago, Randall Cole Muani was their priority target. They've always liked Harry Kane as a player, but they always looked at Daniel Levy and thought it's going to be a hard negotiation. But that was when he had 3-4 years on his contract. Now he has 1 year on his contract. The thing with Harry Kane that I know of it anyway is that he wants to win. He does want to win trophies, but the problem he's had for years is he has a lot of influential people in his ears. He has families. His brother's his age, and he'll obviously Daniel Levy's going to lean on his star player. Let's be honest, and have a voice in his head. He's got a lot of people that's in his head, but the only person that can make his mind up is Harry Kane. So, if I looked at it from the perspective of what Harry Kane could do, I think he could. He's 29 years old. I think he'll probably. I don't know when his birthday is. He'll probably turn 30. At least by the early time of next year. So you're already into another season. Like, I look at that and I think, especially with Kane, if you were to sign that sort of profile of player, even for a Bayern Munich, I think he could go to Bayern on a 3-year contract at 33. I think he could, win maybe a couple of Bundesligas, maybe even a Champions League, who knows? And then I think he could come back to a Tottenham or maybe, God forbid, at that sort of age, maybe a Man United or a Chelsea or somebody. He could come back on a deal back to the Premier League and try and beat Alan Shearer's record in 2 seasons or something, and try and so then really he's sustained his legacy in terms of he's won trophies, but he's also still broken the record. So there is ways that you can look at it, but as far as I know with Harry Kane, he wants to win trophies. And the one thing I always know with Daniel Levy was he never wanted to sell to a Premier League rival. And if he ever was gonna, it's 150 million. Even with 1 year on his contract, it's 150 million. Man United were looking to pay half of that. And they are the only real interested club in buying Harry Kane in terms of the Premier League. So I think he's Premier League, staying in the Premier League and coming to one of the big 6 is, really blown up into a puff of smoke. Bayern Munich's interesting. As far as I'm aware, he's agreed terms with Bayern on a contract. Details and stuff will follow in coming hours and days. I don't have that information to hand right now. But as far as I know with Bayern was they were just putting a feeler offer out there. They weren't serious with the offer. And, I can't remember what the quoting was. I think it was around, 70 million euros, which is about 60 million, something like that. I think, as you said, I think if you pushed up to 90, I think it gets Daniel Levy at least out of bed.
Yeah, exactly.
But the one thing that I knew with Daniel Levy, this was 12 months ago when Kane had 2 years in his contract, was if a club wanted to come and speak to Harry Kane, if you're from the Premier League, it's 150 million and it's not negotiable. And that just gets me out of bed to negotiate. And I might want even more money. And in terms of European clubs, he wants 100 million. Daniel Levy wants 100 million for Harry Kane. And I look at that and I think, yeah, it's your biggest asset and it's your biggest player in years, probably since the sale of your likes of your Gareth Bales and stuff like that, with the sort of money that you were getting at that time in football compared to now. And really, I think it suits everybody really to maybe move on. I think it suits Daniel Levy. You get 100 million, you reinvest into the team, you do a rebuild at Spurs. Harry Kane, it suits him. He can go somewhere, win trophies. And that's the thing for me. I think if Harry Kane plans his career out properly, I think he can do everything that he wanted to do. I think he can go to Bayern, play there for 2, 3 seasons, win a couple of trophies, Bundesligas, DF Pokals, Champions Leagues, etc. And I think he could still come back to a Premier League club at 30, 32, 33, and still maybe in 2, 3 seasons break the Alan Shearer record if he is, still as athletic as he is maybe now and looks after himself. So I think he can still complete the package, but I just don't think he's going to complete it at Tottenham.
Fair. Thank you for that, Tom. I'll just see the last comments, and then they'll definitely call it out because I need to head off and don't you. Shout out to Jarvis Cochran and shout out, buddy. Hey up, Red Devil. Shout out to you, buddy. Hope you at I think it's Man UFC Realist channel, I think as well, Jarvis. So shout out to you guys, man. Really appreciate you. Really appreciate you, buddy. Shout out to Jarvis, man, and also my mate Christian in as well. AC Milan doing a signing Ruben Loftus-Cheek, it sort of seems, after what's going on with Maldini, which happened to Maldini at 18, which was quite sad. But and also for those who are watching, remember to like the vid, and subscribe to Red Devil Studio if you are new. Really appreciate it. Definitely. And then finally, we'll send Steven's comment. Yeah, great content, guys. In chat. Thank you again, Tom. Hashtag Glazer out force only. Exactly. So with that, on that note, guys, thank you guys. Thanks again, Tom. Make sure you follow Tom. He's on Twitter at TomJournalist1. Give him a follow, guys. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Make sure you hit notification once we're live. Hopefully, we could give you the definitive scoop on an actual takeover fairly soon, so and if Stephanie says if we get the takeover news soon before Mason Mount deal, there you go. It is what it is, so but regardless, I'll be live for both. Remember, take care, everybody. Have a good evening and cheers. Peace.